What?
Do now.
I am.
Hey, what is going on, my fellow godlies? This is Vance from Warframe God Builds, and we are back in the full swing of things. Season 3. I know you guys have been waiting for this all summer long. So earlier on I posted a vote to which you unanimously voted for Mesa. I mean, it was between Mag, Nova, and Mesa dominated that poll. So here we go. We are on the midst of Update 19, so it remains to be seen if Mesa is going to be changed with her drop tables and whatnot, because she's currently farmed off of the Mutilus Alad V boss. She could end up being rotated in somewhere else, as Void Keys have become relics, and everything we know as far as drop tables is pretty much currently changing. Alright, so here's what we know about Mesa. We know that she's not your typical frame. We know that she's not very melee-oriented. She's going to have to lock down into a certain area and dish out the damage, as her ult kind of locks her in place and turns her into a turret. Now, she's seen her list of nerfs and buffs throughout the history that she's been in the game. However, at this point in time, she does receive benefits from her secondary weapon, so that's going to be very important when we select a weapon to take into battle. Regarding abilities, she has Ballistic Battery, Shooting Gallery, Shatter Shield, and Peacemaker. Really, the only thing that I consider to be super important in this setup is the Shatter Shield, and that is specifically so she can survive the long haul. I mean, we are building for in-game level content, as we always do with God Builds, so it's going to be very important that you get used to seeing the Shatter Shield. Now, as a personal gripe, I would like to say that Shatter Shield isn't visible enough, at least for me. That's just my personal preference. I can never tell whether that thing is up or down. I'm not one of those guys who watches my cooldowns and watches percentages and stuff like that, so I need visual cues to let me know what's going on, and oftentimes I find myself going down because my Shatter Shield wasn't up. So be very wary of that. Alright, so when you're considering Ballistic Battery and Shooting Gallery, my advice to you is to avoid these moves because it's a big energy waste. It's not really a big significant damage increase for you or your teammates. A Peacemaker, however, has been reworked to include this custom reticle that gradually shrinks over time, and again I have to state a personal gripe. I don't see the sense in having a reticle that has your energy color if it does, especially if it's going to be so faint that you just can't see it once it's reached its minimal size. For example, my biggest issue is shooting enemies at a distance. Once that reticle gets to be the smallest size it can, it becomes increasingly hard for me to hit targets at a range. Another gripe that I have to make about Peacemaker is the fact that it cannot damage nullifier shields. Okay, I get it. YouTube commenters have told me time and time again that power shouldn't work on nullifiers. But if that's the case, would a Valkyr's Hysteria be able to damage the nullifier bubble? Would an Excalibur's Exalted Blade be able to damage the nullifier's bubble? I think not. So I think that as an addition to Mesa, DE should definitely make it so Peacemaker damages a nullifier's shield. It's only fair because that's really the only type of offense she's got going against a nullifier. Alright, so moving on with the actual build. I left it with Rifle Amp, Constitution, Prime Continuity, Narrow-Minded, Vitality, Staggering Shield, Intensify, Prime Flow, Fleeting Expertise, and the one mod we just never use, Retribution. So you're probably going to ask yourself, why is he using Retribution? Well, I'll tell you why. The Peacemaker. Like I said before, I struggle seeing enemies at a distance, and because I struggle with that issue, oftentimes I find myself in a toxic mosh pit of people parading me with pitchforks and torches from behind. In this situation, we have a 60% chance to do electrical damage to our assailants. And what that's going to do is it's going to prevent them from hitting us again. We get struck once and we notice, hey, we're taking shots from the back. We turn around and they're getting shocked to shit. It's an amazing compliment to Peacemaker, and it's strictly for Peacemaker, so if you don't want this here, just toss it out for something else. Also, rifle amp. I really didn't have anything else that I could put here. Sure, I could rock an energy siphon, but I'm also using a generic lens on Mesa, so I just chose to run with the rifle amp specifically for those missions where I'm on the go, and I'm relying more on my primary weapon than I am anything else. The duration in this build is going to be complementing your shields. Staggering shield augment is going to provide that enemies struck with reflected bullets have a 50% chance of staggering. Prime flow for obvious reasons, intensify also for obvious reasons, vitality, need I say any more, and then fleeting expertise to help out with the cost of Peacemaker. Now there's a couple of reasons why I bring Sancti Tigris into battle with me. A is because it's going to benefit a lot from our aura mod, and then the second reason is because it's going to give us health return. Now health return is pretty important to this build because we have no other way of returning health to us. We don't have a melee in the loadout, we don't have a sentinel that can return our health with meta ray. This is going to be super important for those instances where we're struck or we forgot to put up our shield. Regardless of what the case is, this is the build, and I can't really recommend anything else other than like maybe a Vacor, Heck, something, you know, I specifically chose it for the health return. And I can't be compromised to use a Fierce to return my health when the secondary is so important to the Peacemaker. So this is what we're stuck with, and that's really all I'm going to recommend. In terms of secondary, I'm using the Juggernaut Slayer, Lex Prime. And at this rate, the Lex Prime is a pretty bulky asset to this build. Quite simply because we have Prime Pistol Gambit, Prime Target Cracker, both maxed out. We've got the Hornet Strike, the Barrel Diffusion. We added in a dual stat mod specifically to increase our status chance. That way that corrosive proc comes up quite often and knocks down those armored enemies. We've got Hollow Point for critical. I mean, this is a very efficient build for both critical and status chance, and it's going to reflect that when you start doing your Peacemaker. Before I move on to cover our companion, I wanted to take a look at the generic lens and just remind you guys that energy overflow is going to make it so the void replenishes 2 energy per second for the duration of the mission. This is an awesome passive to have, and if you combine that with the companion that we're using, you're probably never going to run out of energy. Okay, so there's just one last thing to consider before we move on to our companion. The fact that I'm not using any melee here. Well, that is quite simply because Mesa has a passive where if you don't bring a melee into battle, you get increased health. So the reason why I prefer the Smeeta over the Adarza is quite simply because of the charm. Charm can be very misleading based off of what it says, but rest assured that I've seen it increase my energy, I've seen it give me out red crits, and I've also seen it instantly reload my weapon. This is phenomenal when you're in a Peacemaker and this thing procs. All your crits turn red, and you do a great amount of damage. I mean, I go from doing 21,000 to 37,000 at some points. It's never a steady number, but the fact that it red crits everything that you crit with is just phenomenal. I'm not done with this build yet, but I can state at this point that moving forward with God Builds, I'm going to use it multiple times with you know, Mag, Nova. I'm going to resort to the Smeeta Kavat a lot. So as the God Builds series continues, so too will this build, and it's just as good as a Kubro, considering the fact that it's using pretty much all these mods. So You can take use of Pack Leader if you chose to run a melee with Mesa. This is something that I have here that's kind of situational because I use it on multiple different builds. It's not just a Mesa exclusive thing. So if you're going to use it for Mesa and Mesa only, I would suggest just throwing out the Pack Leader and moving on with your day. So that pretty much concludes my build for Mesa. She wasn't your typical frame, and she took a lot of learning to get used to, but I can promise you that if you take the time to get used to her techniques, it's going to be a very, very rewarding experience. So if you like this video, of course, hit that thumbs up, tell your friend about it, share it, subscribe, and check us out on our live stream. Also be sure to follow me on Twitter, that way you can know ahead of time when I'm going to go live. So, until next time guys, peace.
The Pioneer package is a little brother variant of the Elite Edition, which I've been giving out for free on my live stream. The details of the Pioneer package is that it's static. What you see is what you get. You'll be granted 50% store discount for life, access to 5 Guardians, access to 20 armor pieces, 5 sets, in-game Pioneer icon, and 10 million starting ions.